So Roy McCann, the actor who plays the Hound, was recently spotted in Belfast. What could that mean? And for you show-only watchers, this may contain some spoilers here because I'm going to be talking about the Hound here and some events that happened in the books that we have not seen in the show. It's been cut entirely. So just a spoiler warning for that. But I'm going to be talking about a fairly popular theory called the Gravedigger Theory, which would lead to what Ice and Fire nerds refer to as cleganebowl. Potentially the Hound has survived his fight with Brienne in the show, although this did happen differently in the books. So I'm going to quickly go over the so-called Gravedigger Theory and then go into cleganebowl and why I think that may or may not happen. So as we all know in the show, Brienne and the Hound get in a fight and she essentially kills him by pushing him off a ledge, and he sustains pretty bad injuries. Not only did he catch a sword with his hands and cut his hands down there in half, but he also severely injured his leg. Of course, at this point, Arya and the Hound had gotten pretty close, although he was still on her kill list, so of course she left him there to die and took his silver as he begged for mercy. Now in the books, this doesn't happen. Brienne never fights the Hound in the books, so in the books these injuries were sustained in the fight at the tavern when he and Arya went into the tavern and he said,
"I'm gonna have to eat every fucking chicken in this room."
So I believe this is Brienne's 4th chapter in A Feast for Crows, and she is out looking for apparently any Stark kid she can find. It is the same in the books and the show, it just happens at a slightly different time, and she is out looking for Sansa or Arya as she had pledged to Catelyn Stark. So her and Pod come across a small island near the Trident called the Quiet Isle. And on this small island, there's essentially a small monastery, if you will, in order of the Faith of the Seven, where people can go and atone for their sins. And Brienne talks to a guy called the Elder Brother, who's apparently kind of the leader of this little order. And he seems to know a hell of a lot about the Hound. He essentially tells Brienne that he did come across the Hound as he lay there dying after the injury, and said that he basically nursed him until he died and then he buried him. And again, he seems to know a lot about the Hound, with quotes such as, "Sandor Clegane was a man in conflict." And this is also reinforced throughout the books. We see this early on when he's still in King's Landing, as he kind of gets attached to Sansa and starts kind of looking out after her. You kind of start feeling the Hound's pain as opposed to when you first saw him in the books or the show, he was just a character that you hated who was just seen to be a cold-blooded murderer. So this Elder Brother says that he found the Hound, he nursed him as long as he lived, and then he buried him. End of story, right? The problem is with what the Elder Brother is saying is that he said he had also died. He said, "I died in the Battle of the Trident." So obviously when he says he died, he's standing there talking to Brienne, alive and well, so obviously he's talking about a metaphorical death. So apparently he was a warrior, and he was into wine and women and that type of thing, and he atoned for his sins and began a new life. So this could implicate that when he says that he buried the Hound, that he actually buried the Hound figuratively, but Sandor Clegane could still be alive and well and now a different person. But it's not just the conversation that she has with the Elder Brother, it's that she actually saw somebody that reminded her of the Hound. She saw who she called the Gravedigger, and she noted that a brother bigger than Brienne was struggling to dig a grave. And also, from the way he moved, it was plain to see he was lame. So there's only a few people in Westeros as big as Brienne or bigger, and that would be the Hound and his brother the Mountain. And I need to note really quickly here that this order of monks essentially cover their entire bodies so you can't see anything but their eyes. So that's obviously convenient for George R. Martin to throw that in there. And she also noted, for me at least, the most interesting little clue, and it reads, "When the dog went to sniff him, he dropped his spade and scratched his ear." Now, of course, this little dog could just be a dog that came up in something, little detail that George R. Martin threw in there for no good reason, but we know that's not how he writes. The Hound was obviously his house sigil, and he took his nickname from that. You know, from these 3 clues alone, you see this huge guy. He seems to be struggling to dig a grave, and he seems to be lame, which would coincide with the injury he sustained to his leg. Now again, in the books this was slightly different from the show, but he did receive the same injury. And the other, I guess you could say, physical evidence is that Sandor Clegane, or the Hound's horse, was there. And it's pretty well known throughout the books, especially in the Arya chapters, that his horse, named Stranger, had one hell of a temper and would only be calm around the Hound himself. He was known to be kind of an asshole. It's known in one of Arya's chapters that he was quick to bite and kick. It's pretty well established that this horse had a pretty bad temper, and the only one that could really tame him and get him to listen was the Hound himself. So how did this Elder Brother take this horse from where he found him and the Hound dying, and then take him all the way back to the Quiet Isle without being kicked or bitten or what have you, trying to lead this horse? It should also be noted that it wasn't just said that he just brought him back, that George R. Martin threw in some details about the trip and said how treacherous this was. It wasn't just an easy walk across a meadow, that there was quicksand, you know, watch where you step and those type of things. That obviously implies that the Hound was perhaps saved, and then he took the horse himself and either rode or led it back to the Quiet Isle. And of course, while talking to the Elder Brother, Brienne says, "It is true then, Sandor Clegane is dead." And the Elder Brother responds, "He is at rest." So he said initially that the Hound is dead, but he won't go so far as to say that Sandor Clegane is dead. He just says he is at rest. And of course, he had also mentioned that he previously died, and obviously that was a metaphorical death. So he could very easily be saying, in a metaphorical way that the Hound is dead, but Sandor Clegane is reborn again with the faith of the Seven and atoning for his sins. So that's the Gravedigger theory in a nutshell. So again, you have Brienne and Pod coming across this small monastery, who happens to have brothers there from the faith of the Seven who wrap themselves completely so you can only see their eyes. She sees this tall character that's taller than her, and there's only two people I'm aware of that's taller than her. That is the Hound and his brother the Mountain. There's also the fact that she saw him with an injured leg, apparently having trouble digging this grave. She saw a hound or a dog come up, and he took the time to drop his shovel and pet the dog. And again, that points back to the Hound, his actual nickname, and his house sigil. And then of course you have the elder brother who seems to know a lot about him, who actually said he found him and buried him after he died, but then he also has his horse there. So that's a lot of evidence. And for me, even if we never find out that that's actually him or not, it's actually a pretty good ending for that character, at least for me, because, you know, he was one of those guys who started off, you hated him, and then as you started to see him and who he was and what he's been through and all his pain and personal struggles and conflicts, for me that would be a kind of a good ending in a sense. There are not very many good endings in A Song of Ice and Fire for a lot of these characters, especially the ones we like. So even if he did die there and is literally dead, at least for me it already kind of turned the corner and became this kind of good person and kind of opened up a little bit to Arya and that type of thing, even to Sansa before he left, but even more so down the road with Arya as he went on his journey with her. But the idea of him actually being alive obviously leads to big speculation on what Ice and Fire nerds call cleganebowl. So we know this trial of Cersei's coming up, and we know that Qyburn has reanimated the Mountain, and now he's called Sir Robert Strong, and he's going to be her champion in her trial by combat. Us Ice and Fire nerds want the Hound to be the one to kill his brother, because he had always said he's going to be the one to kill his brother. I think this could work. I think it could parallel a little bit. You have the Mountain being killed but reanimated as a Franken Mountain, and then if the Hound's kind of reborn in a certain way, that would be parallel, and then he could come back and potentially come back and actually finish the job. So my question is, how does he get back to King's Landing? We know he left on bad terms. He just left up in the middle of the Battle of the Blackwater. He said, fuck King Joffrey and fuck the Queen and fuck everybody else, and he's getting the hell out of Dodge. And of course the price was put on his head. So how does he get back into King's Landing and potentially fight and kill or be killed by his brother? Well, for one thing, if the Gravedigger theory holds true, he is now kind of a member of the Faith, and the Faith of the Seven. And of course in King's Landing, by her own doing, Cersei has reinstituted the Faith Militant, who of course is the one charging her anyway, where she's going to have this trial. Potentially, even though he was a wanted man and considered dead, he could walk back in there and represent the Faith as their champion, since she's going to have the Mountain, or Sir Robert Strong, representing her as her champion. So I think that could potentially work. Even if he was arrested or something afterwards, it would still be a good ending for him to actually kill his brother. The problem I have with this is he's injured badly, and he's got this bad leg now. So there are a couple issues on how he could do it. He would be, instantly arrested once he got into King's Landing. But then again, right now, Tommen has no control. Cersei's now free of prison, but she has no real control because the High Sparrow has all the control of the Faith Militant. So potentially, if he has atoned for his sins, somehow goes through the High Sparrow to represent the Faith in this trial, they would potentially probably just let him walk in and become that champion. So I want to know what you guys think. Do you think that the Hound lives? Is Sandor Clegane alive? And if so, would you love to see him go and kill his brother in Cersei's trial that hopefully we'll get to see in season 6. And one other quick note I just thought about I'd like to throw in here as evidence is that when we saw the Hound fight Beric Dondarrion, and of course he won and killed Beric Dondarrion, and he was then resurrected by Thoros of Myr, Beric Dondarrion said, "Go in peace, Sandor Clegane. The Lord of Light isn't done with you yet." So what does that mean? I mean, after that, he basically rode with Arya and tried to take her several different places, but never accomplished that goal. So did that hint that he had other things to do, because he really didn't complete a task in the sense of getting Arya safely somewhere, whether it was for gold or not? He never really accomplished that. He simply died before he accomplished anything. So what did Beric Dondarrion mean by that? What did he mean by the Lord of Light is not done with you yet? I personally would love to see this happen. I think we're all pulling for cleganebowl, and I hope that Rory McCann being spotted in Belfast isn't simply him just visiting the set or visiting old friends that he made on the set while he's part of it. It also could be that we have to take into account, it could be some kind of flashback scene that he could be filming if he is in fact filming for Game of Thrones, but I don't see any particular thing that the Hound should be involved with as far as a flashback goes. Again, let me know what you guys think. I think my next Game of Thrones video will be on probably Bran and Bloodraven. I want to go into some theories on those guys because we're also focused on Jon Snow coming back in Azor Ahai and Dany with her dragons and her coming over to Westeros and that type of thing. But I think that Bran and Bloodraven and the Children of the Forest have a big part to play in the end game. So I wanted to start getting into that type of stuff as well. But in the meantime, you can click here for my last video I did. It's another Season 6 Q&A video. And I also like to give a shout out to my friend Bar from BarTube. Please check out her channel, and I'll link in the description below as well. In the meantime, you can also check out her video, Hero Melisandre, and her theory on how she is not evil and she's actually trying to do some good, and I completely agree with this theory. Really good channel, really cool theory. She does some really good chapter breakdowns. Check her out. Be sure to subscribe. Thanks again, you guys. Appreciate all the support. Don't forget to subscribe to get everything. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.